Each week, nearly a dozen movies are released theatrically. 40 films a month, more than 400 a year. That's a plethora of cinema. Too much cinema. You'd have to be an addict to see all that, but don't fret. We've got you covered. This is CinemAddicts.
Hey everyone, what's up? It's a new week of CinemAddicts. This is CinemAddicts episode 309. Eric Holmes and I just did a very long episode of Patreon members. Thank you so much for supporting us here on Patreon, being our patrons and whatnot. But overall, CinemAddicts listeners, thank you so much for supporting me, Eric, and Bruce Perky. Of course, Anderson Cowan as well, co-founder of CinemAddicts, for supporting us all around. This week, we're covering movies coming out for the week of Friday, August 29th, 2025. There's a little big caveat to this episode is because it was a huge Patreon episode, there's only two big movies we are covering this week. They include The Toxic Avenger and a little movie called A Little Prayer. Plus, Bruce Perky has a review of Eddington and the assigned pick from Mitch Burns, I believe. Yeah, Mitch Burns. We love Mitch Burns. More on Mitch Burns in a second. His assigned pick for our Patreon members is Disconnect. Okay, so Disconnect is reviewed by Bruce Perky, assigned pick. Bruce also reviews Eddington. Bruce also reviews The Toxic Avenger. Eric and I will have a review of The Toxic Avenger, and I'll have a very quick mini review of A Little Prayer. Eric Holmes, how you doing, buddy?
I'm saying a little prayer right now.
You're saying Eric Holmes is saying
I'm saying a little prayer for Mitch Burns for bringing Disconnect into my life.
Oh, Mitch Burns. Here's the thing. Look, Eric and I cheated a little bit. We were going to review Disconnect for this episode. We've already reviewed Disconnect for our Patreon episode. So a little bit of a cheat. It was our assigned pick for our regular feed. Eric and I just moved that review off of this main feed to our Patreon. But don't worry, Mitch Burns and everyone else, Bruce Perky will have his review of Disconnect. And what rating will Bruce Perky give Disconnect, Eric Holmes? What do you think?
It better be a 6.9. Otherwise, I don't know. I'm surprised you gave it what you gave it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, see, it's a little spoiler, a little preview of what Eric is a little bit surprised about my rating of Disconnect. And
Mitch, I will say, if you're coming across people that don't like it, just know I loved it. So thank you.
Good. And again, thank you, Mitch Burns, for being starting up our CinemAddicts movie club. CinemAddicts listeners, if you're not part of the movie club, what are you guys doing? Every single week, our movie club talks about a movie that is chosen by one of our movie club members. This week, I forgot who the movie club member
was. Eric Chavez chose Butcher Boy, and for next week, I believe it's Mike Cole chose Rudderless.
Thank you.
But Butcher Boy was the one we just did this week.
And Eric Holmes, you were one of the movie club members who posted your review on the chat, movie club chat for Butcher Boy. You really enjoyed Butcher Boy, correct? If I'm not mistaken.
It was a good movie. It was like one of those not for me kind of movies. I'll just read it. I enjoyed the fantasy element of Butcher Boy. Sort of reminded me of a slightly worse version of Millions or a slightly better version of 400 Blows. Overall, not bad. I'll go 3 stars on this, maybe 3.5 on a rewatch.
The 400 Blows, is that the name of a Greg Srivasti movie if he has millions of dollars and it's traveling all over Europe and Asia? Is that what you think that
it's Greg Srivasti
family
walking
show?
around with 400 $1 bills.
Family show. So I love the 400 Blows. Not my personal 400 Blows, but the Friends Wonderful classic. But yeah, join our CinemAddicts movie club if you can. And again, thank you, Mitch Burns, for starting that up. And you're going to really, Mitch Burns, since you're a Patreon member as well, you're going to love Eric Holmes' review of Disconnect as well. Now, by the way, Patreon this month, not for this month in August. We just finished our bonus episode, me and Eric. We spotlighted the year 2012. For next month in September, the year we're covering is a very important year personally for me, 1982. We're spotlighting the year 1982.
It was the year Greg lost his virginity.
Family show. No, it's that year still yet, since my mother listened to the show, even in my early 50s, that year has still not passed me by. Unfortunately, I'm the last American, Asian, Filipino virgin in the world. So family show. But I'll tell you one thing, 1982 is our spotlight for September 2025. Eric Holmes, how do you feel about the year 1982? Are you excited about that? We're going to cover that. Okay.
Oh man, I just looked up a bunch of stuff and I forgot all of it.
No, Eric, we can't cover the Beastmaster as one of our Patreon picks.
I mean, we could. It's almost like Beastmaster.
No, Eric, we can't cover Time Rider. We can't cover it. There's a lot of movies from 1982 that we possibly can cover. Did Krull come out? Is it Krull or Cull? I don't know. One of those years. 1982 is a very important year
Oh,
for
that
me.
was Dark Crystal came out that year. There
Oh,
you
I
go.
still
Man,
haven't seen the Dark Crystal. Can you believe that? After, it's a
you
Henson one,
should.
right?
You should. It's pretty good. Pretty
Good.
good.
Okay, now speaking of pretty good, Eric Holmes. I know, by the way, folks, Eric Holmes has had like probably 30 minutes of sleep. So that's another thing. I'm opening the books up here. So that's why my usual soft Greg voice is ASMR Greg voice is not here. It's more of the quick Greg Zabosky
Hey,
voice.
how's it going?
Hey, how are you, Eric? The Toxic Avenger, Eric Holmes.
Oh God, the
Written
Toxic Avenger.
and directed by Macon Blair.
Oh
Bruce
God,
Purkey
Macon
has
Blair.
he has a review. Bruce Purkey has a review of the Toxic Avenger at the back end of this episode. But the Toxic Avenger on IMDb it says 2023. I don't know the exact details why it took until 2024 for them to release the Toxic Avenger. All the blessings to Cineverse for
They
actually having.
didn't.
Oh,
They released it this year in 2025.
you're right. 2000. I mean, it took Yeah, right. 2023. It says on IMDb, but like Eric said, 2025. It's going to be in theaters August 29th. Do you have any idea, Eric Holmes, why it maybe probably took 2 years for Macon Blair to release the Toxic Avenger?
I
Any clue?
don't know, because like I remember like it was a thing. Like people were like, oh, why are you remaking Toxic Avenger? And then it was kind of like oh, Macon Blair's doing it. Oh, it'd probably be cool then. And then there was sort of a lot of hype around it.
Peter
And
Dinklage
then
as a lead as Toxie,
yeah,
right?
yeah, this definitely inspired casting. And after watching the movie, it definitely worked out. But then yeah, it just kind of fizzled out and like nothing happened with it.
Right,
And I couldn't tell you why. And I watched the movie, I'm like, well, it's not because it was bad.
right. Well, let's talk about the ensemble. Kevin Bacon, Elijah Wood, Jacob Tremblay, Taylor Page. Really good level, and like the aforementioned
Elijah Wood playing the penguin.
Elijah Wood playing the Penguin. Yeah, he's good. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. People like me and Eric and Bruce, I'm assuming we have a love for the original Trauma version, the original, the Toxic Avenger. So when we were growing up, the Toxic Avenger, I'm assuming for people of our ilk, our age, our generation, were fans of that Trauma classic. So this has a built-in audience for people like us. What would be interesting to see if this version of the Toxic Avenger will garner a new set of fans. Do you think this is for people like us, Eric Holmes, or do you think this is for people like us as well as a new generation of cinephiles?
I would say both because this doesn't really follow the same storyline or even tone as the original Toxic Avenger, like at all. This is more of a family story, like because Peter Dinklage, he's the stepfather of Jacob Tremblay, and then the Jacob Tremblay's mom died, so he kind of took over, and so he's trying to sort of connect with them, but Jacob Tremblay is always kind of keeping him his arms distant, like you're not my dad, you're my stepdad,
He's also a
that sort of
teenager,
thing.
right? He's also a teenager, right?
Yeah,
Like that's
and he
one of
also lost his mom, so
100%.
and so Peter Dinklage, like he doesn't even turn into the Toxic Avenger until like half hour, 40 minutes into the
I
movie.
think so. Like 32, I'm thinking 32, 33 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it kind of became one of those things where like early on I'm like, oh, when's he getting turned into Toxie? And then it kind of went into oh, how's this relationship gonna play out? Along the way, they do still manage to have like a bunch of kind of gross out moments and kind of silly characters and silly sense of humor that you would expect in a Toxic Avenger movie.
Did you
But
think it took too long to 30? Was it 32 minutes too
no,
long?
no.
Okay.
I think on paper it does, but in practice, as I'm watching it, I just rolled with it.
Mhm.
It was like, come on, turn into Toxie. And then like after about 5 minutes, I'm like, no, I'm invested. Let's see how this plays out.
How about the humor?
So
Do you remember the original? Sorry, Eric. The original humor of the Toxic Avenger, was it sort of mirroring this type of off-kilter
a
humor
little
as well?
bit, a little
Okay.
bit. Yeah, because I mean, Lloyd Kaufman's got kind of a silly sense of humor just in general. And so I think Macon Blair kind of shares that similar sense of humor in this. Not all the jokes land, but some of them, some of the jokes are so stupid they're hilarious.
Right. And you said some of the
Yeah,
jokes don't land, but sometimes it's part and parcel the mechanism behind this movie that you're going to have jokes that don't land. It's just
yeah,
part of the fabric of it, right? It doesn't matter if it lands or not. It's just the jokes are flying in this movie, I
yeah.
guess. Yeah.
But yeah, it's weird because this is not at all the movie I thought it was going to be,
Mm.
but I kind of still dug it. And yeah,
I would say that, okay, so Winston Goose, that's the main character. He's a janitor for this big factory company headed up by Kevin Bacon's character, right?
yeah.
And Winston Goose, again played by Peter Dinklage, he's a janitor. He Due to a toxic accident, he becomes a Toxic Avenger. And before he becomes a Toxic Avenger, like Eric says, there's 32 minutes of world building, and you get to realize Winston, he's a stepdad. He is in debt because he's a janitor. He's not making a lot of money. He can barely support himself and his stepson, whom he loves very much. And so you get that sort of world of the struggles that a working class person has to go through. So you get that family dynamic, but then I feel when it kicks in by the 33rd minute, you get a lot of gore. Yeah, there's some gore at the beginning, and there's a
Oh
little
yeah,
bit of
yeah, you definitely have a lot. Like even the opening,
scene. Yeah.
the opening scene where they shoot the guy. He's like, "Ah, you son of
Yeah,
a!"
exactly. Yeah, and
And
it's
when they
funny.
show him like 3 or 4 times until they finally like blasted him out the window, and
Hmm?
then they cut to him like you think he's dead on the ground, and then it gets a close up. He's like, "You sons of bitch!"
It's funny. It's a
Yeah.
funny movie, but I think the biggest draw for people, whether you're a huge fan of the original or just enjoy this movie, if you want to see just a ton of gore. I mean, not sick gore, but just trauma-esque
Yeah.
Toxic Avenger gore.
Yeah,
You're
the
gonna
the gore effects in this are definitely like cartoonish.
cartoonish, yeah.
Yeah.
You feel like you're reading a comic book with the panels, and I think Macon Blair gives a really good with whatever budget he's working with. I think he does a very good job with the off-kilter humor and the world building, and having Peter Dinklage as Toxie brings an extra level of gravitas, I believe, to the proceedings. He's very good as Toxie. I don't know if there's going to be, I'm thinking there's not going to be a sequel to this because of the distribution. It took 2 years to make this.
Well,
And I wouldn't mind. Oh, look, I wouldn't
I mean,
mind a
there is an
sequel.
after credit sequence that
Right. There's a really cool after credit sequence.
Toxic to Avenger or whatever it said there.
So,
Also, yeah, if you want to learn how to make a grilled cheese sandwich, stay for after the credits. Oxy will show you how to do that.
right, there's some really interesting dance sequences too in the movie. And yeah, it has high rewatchability factor. It's a fun movie. I don't know why it wasn't released sooner. And I love the effects in this movie. The practical effects. And I think I was really wondering whether Macon Blair is going to have a problem. Just was he going to make a movie that's just a straight up homage to the original? And as Eric says, there's seemingly two kind of different movies. This movie stands on its
I
own.
mean, there's definitely like a bunch of Easter eggs and like kind of nods here and there, but this is, if you're not familiar with the Toxic Avenger or just trauma in general, I think a lot of those Easter eggs will just go right past you. But this is definitely like, definitely kind of trying to do its own thing. And I
Yeah.
appreciate it for that. Like, it definitely has the humor and the gore that you expect in a trauma movie, but it's also has some sort of dramatic kind of family elements to it that, like, I never thought that I would describe a Toxic Avenger movie as cute, but that's kind of what this was.
Yes. A little bit cute, a little bit heartwarming at times, and earnest. It's a little bit earnest too. It
Yeah.
has some earnest moments, some real earnest moments. So that is the Toxic Avenger, Eric Holmes' final thought and rating.
Yeah, this is kind of everything I was hoping it would be, and a whole bunch of things I had no idea it would be, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. And now I know how to make a grilled cheese sandwich. So that's added bonus. Yeah, Peter Dinklage is Toxie's inspired casting, and I was real curious to see how that would work, and it worked great. I mean, Peter Dinklage is a great actor just in general, but yeah,
Okay, cool.
5 stars.
Five
You did
stars
it.
from Eric Holmes. And
Making
I'm,
Blair's rad. Keep
yeah.
making movies, please.
By the way, one of the great little mini concert sequence in this movie. That's all I'm gonna say. Really, just it was fun. It was just a fun movie all around, and it's a mini concert sequence that plays some music, but then, well, this is a Toxic Avenger. There's gonna be more than music that's being played, and I personally enjoy that. I'm giving the Toxic Avenger 4.5 out of 5 stars for me. Really enjoyed the Toxic Avenger in theaters, August 29th. Finally, Second movie that's also coming out August 29th is a film. Oh my gosh, I hope Eric Holmes, I know you're tired this week. If there's something that you could put into your back pocket, maybe even do a rewind next week. And there's a movie called A Little Prayer. And I don't know, Eric, are you a fan of family dramas that are well done? Or you're not hot and cold? Are you just right in the middle as long as it's a good movie kind of thing for you?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So A Little Prayer, it centers on this guy named Bill, played by David Strathairn. What do you think of David Strathairn as an actor? Good night, good luck, and pretty good lead.
He's
Yeah,
pretty good.
pretty
I'm
good.
kind of I'm not in love with him. Don't hate him, but usually when he shows up, it's like, yeah, he's pretty good.
Pretty good. Yeah. So Bill, he is a just former, yeah, I don't know if he's a Marine part of, he's a military vet. And he is the patriarch of this family in the Southern community, I think in Winston-Salem. He's a business owner and he has a very loving family. His son works with him in his company, and his son, David, is also a military vet. And David is married to this woman named Patty. No, David is married to this woman named Tammy, played by Jane Levy. And Tammy, what's interesting is Tammy and her father-in-law, again played by Bill, they have a very good friendship. And their friendship between the patriarch of the family and his daughter-in-law, the characters played by David Strathairn and Jane Levy, they form the heart of A Little Prayer. And it's an interesting family dynamic is you don't really see these type of father and daughter-in-law friendships and relationships in family dramas at the forefront, but that's what you're going to get with A Little Prayer. The other people involved in this include Bill's daughter, played by Anna Kamp, and the daughter Patty. She's pretty much the black sheep in the family. She comes sort of for a little bit towards the middle of the movie, and she just needs a place to stay for a while because she's having problems with her husband. Patty also brings her daughter in tow, and so you see some of their Patty's dynamic with her parents in A Little Prayer. Bill's wife is played by hold on, let me see if I could find the wife. I gotta find the wife here. I'll look her up in a second. I forgot what her name is, but she's very good in this movie. The movie is written and directed by Angus McLaughlin, and its running time is 90 minutes. It's in theaters August 29th. And what's interesting about Angus McLaughlin is he is the screenwriter behind a movie from 2000, I think it's 2004, 2005 called Junebug, and that movie actually made Amy Adams a star like almost 20 years ago. And that, if you remember Junebug, I don't know if you ever saw Junebug, Eric, but that's also a really well done drama. And those nuances from Junebug can be found in A Little Prayer. It seems like a very little indie movie, and though it is, it just packs a very powerful punch, thanks in large part to the performances by Jane Levy and David Strathairn. It's just it feels like a real family drama. And by the end, I was getting pretty emotional. I did not completely shed tears and cry, but it was so really well written and well done. And it's earnest. Let me look right now at the person who plays Bill's wife. Yes, Bill's wife is played by Celia Weston, and she plays Vanita. All of the actors involved in this movie do just excellent work. And it's one of these movies that I think most people will just skim over, whether it's streaming on Netflix or Tubi or one of these streamers. And that'll be a shame because A Little Prayer, even though it looks like this quote little movie, it's a very layered family drama that I think will really appeal to so many people. It appealed to me. And it's one of those things at the end when you see a final conversation between the father and daughter-in-law. It's one of those movies, that's one of those moments that I think that will stick with me for the rest of this year. I think it's one of my favorite films, actually, of 2025. My rating for A Little Prayer, though little, it's a very nuanced, touching, and resonant family drama. 5 out of 5 stars for A Little Prayer. So again,
That's weird.
in theaters, August 29th. What happened, Eric?
So you say it's a family drama, but there's no silly humor or gross out kind of gore effects.
Right, exactly.
It sounds like what you're describing is like Toxic Avenger, but not as good.
I as much as I like the Toxic Avenger, I liked A Little Prayer a little bit more, but it's because I guess I was in the mood for something really layered and nuanced and very touching. Jane Levy, is, and David Strathairn, there's just so good in this movie. And I hope more people, more cinematics people, go check out A Little Prayer. I'm going to completely, as the weeks progress, it's sort of on the level of To Kill a Wolf, Eric. That's how much I loved
Oh,
A Little
nice.
Prayer. Yeah, that's how much I loved A
You
Little
buried
Prayer.
the lead there. You should have led with that.
I should have, Eric. So that is it for this week. Again, apologies for the curtailed section of cinematics because we spent a lot of time on Patreon. These were two big movies that we're giving you. And then on the back end, Bruce Porky over at the Cinematic will give you his take on the Toxic Avenger and then also give his review of Eddington as well. Before you go, Eric, and of course, Bruce Porky also will review. Eric says that Bruce Perky is going to give a 6.9 star rating to Disconnect. We'll see what Bruce Perky says in a few moments. Anything you want to say before we get out of here, Eric Holmes?
Yeah, before we started that's how long the day's been. Before we started the Patreon and then this, I just did an interview with Rebecca Kennedy from Traumatica, which
Yes.
I believe is coming out real soon.
September 12th or something. One of those
Yeah,
weeks. In a couple
but
weeks.
there's a movie coming out digitally on September 9th. You know what movie that is?
No, I'm sorry, Eric. My
To
bad.
Tommy, to Tommy
Oh, never
will
heard of it.
be available.
No, I'm kidding. Yes, of course. Yes.
I believe all of us really fell over ourselves over this one. It's a fantastic movie, and yeah, it'll be available digitally on September 9th. So TATAMI.
Well, Eric, can you
Keep
do
an
us?
eye out on for that one because that movie is freaking rad.
Well, Eric, in all fairness, coming close to the date of September, I'm glad you mentioned it. Please keep it on the Google Docs. Like every single week, we got to mention to Tommy. It's such an ignored film. And it's a movie that will keep you on the edge of your seat, right? It's inspired by a true story, shot in black and white,
Yeah.
and absolutely bleeping ignored, right? This movie.
Unfortunately, yeah. But I think a lot of that is people just don't know about it. Now this coming out on digital, hopefully it'll be available to a lot more people and word will spread about it and maybe people will start watching it. At least that's what I hope because that movie's excellent.
That is a value added recommendation from Eric Holmes. Okay, so we're done here over at CinemAddicts. This is episode 309. Well, we're not completely done because over at Clamoring in the Attic is Bruce Porky with
Clamor, clamor.
he's clamoring, and Eric Holmes will be sleeping, and I'll be eating. And we're gonna be doing our, and we're gonna be watching more movies. We watch so many movies
I
every
better
week.
change Bruce's water before I pass out.
Please do. And whenever you change the water, I hope you don't throw your own spittle out of disdain into the. You don't mix it, right? You don't mix. You don't. Oh, okay. No comment, Eric Holmes, on that.
I just toss some water in there. Sometimes toilet water, sometimes it's sink water.
All right.
It depends on what Bruce gives Disconnect.
Well, oh, remember that, Bruce Perky. And remember, hey, at least you're getting liquids. Okay, so that's it. We're done with this week. Thank you guys so much for supporting us over at CinemAddicts. And of course, over in the Cinematic, here's Bruce Perky.
Welcome to another Cinematic, the attic of cinema, where I climb down from Eric's attic. Don't ask why am I in Eric's attic? It sounds very creepy. If you don't already know, you have not been listening very long, and if you do know, well, you've heard about it before. But this week, I am bringing you a few movies, like always. A couple screeners, well, actually, one screener and some other different things. So the big screener this week, and the main one I caught up with, is the remake of The Toxic Avenger. Long-awaited release of remake of The Toxic Avenger. This movie has been completed for at least a year, if not 2 years, at least a year. And I feel like it came out last fall in the festival circuit. And it's finally going to be getting a release, as well as I'm going to be talking about Eddington. I caught up with that only 3 weeks or so after it got released in the theaters. Very brief in my area, but is getting a digital release right now for purchase. And he is one of the most interesting directors to me, so I wanted to catch up with it, even though I know that Eric was not a fan of this movie. We will talk about that. I also have the assigned movie for 2012 from Mitch Burns, which is called Disconnect. That is in preview to our upcoming 2012 Patreon episode where we do Haywire and we do The Imposter. But Disconnect is what we're going to do on the main episode here as part of the 2012 kind of project for this month. As well as that, I might talk a little bit about the first 3 episodes of Alien Earth, or I might not. I've mentioned I was going to do it last week and I didn't end up doing it. I may or may not do it this week as well, but we will see. Okay, let's get into it. The Toxic Avenger, directed by Macon Blair. Macon Blair, known for his association with Jeremy Saulnier, especially. Macon Blair has done a lot of work with him. Macon Blair has also done his own directing. In this case, he's directing the famous indie, super independent comedy kind of superhero movie from the 80s. Very gross, very violent, notorious. It kind of put trauma on the map back in the day. And he is now doing this version of the Toxic Avenger in 2025. The question is, are you going to be able to capture that feeling, that spirit of the original Troma movies, or was that even the goal of this movie? Like, what is a new Toxic Avenger going to be like? And remember, there's a lot of buzz around this and how cool this is going to be in the festival circuit. And I remember kind of a mild, I wouldn't say disappointment, but I feel like there wasn't near as much buzz as people might have been expecting after the fact. And I kind of wondered, like, well, is it just not a good movie, or what's the deal with Toxic Avenger? Quick preview. I think it is good. I think it's exactly what you need from a Toxic Avenger movie. That's my opinion. Maybe other people will disagree. Maybe Eric and Greg will disagree, although I think they're going to at least enjoy it. Anyway, in this movie, you've got a bunch of people you recognize, but I will just mention some of the top line people that caught my eye, especially as Winston, aka Toxie. That's Peter Dinklage. And then you've got Wade, played by Jacob Tremblay. You've got Bob, played by Kevin Bacon, as kind of one of the main villains. And then you've got Fritz, who's almost like Cobblepot's from the Penguin character from Batman. He almost looks like him, played by Elijah Wood. Now, Peter Dinklage, first and foremost, is the biggest thing. You're going to be like, okay, they're casting this really famous guy as Toxie. How's he going to work in that role? And I think he does a really good job. I don't think he's quite as pathetic and pitiful as the original character before he became Toxic Avenger in the original movie. But what he does bring is definitely a level of acting prowess and pathos to the character before he becomes full-on Toxie in this movie. What is the plot to this movie? I mean, you don't need to know too much about it, but if you have no idea about the plot of it, Winston, who becomes Toxie, played by Peter Dinklage, is a single stepdad. He's living a very, I don't know, you want to say like a very low, he's not getting a lot done with his life. He's working for this corporate entity known as BTH, and they are the ones producing all this toxic waste, which is possibly causing mutations. You're not sure, but you're sure it is. He's trying to take care of his stepson. They're having a little bit of a rocky relationship, but he's trying to be the best stepdad he can. And he finds out that he has not very long to live because he has a tumor in his head. Brain tumor. And he's having issues with healthcare and just all the kind of things you'd expect in modern society, right? Corporate entities don't really care about your healthcare. You barely have healthcare. It doesn't do a lot to help save you when something terrible is going wrong. And as part of his efforts to save himself, he gets embroiled in kind of not really a revenge scheme exactly, but a bit of a corporate revenge kind of a thing. And as part of that process, he gets killed and falls into a vat of toxic waste, thus producing almost Joker-esque from Tim Burton's Batman, a Toxic Avenger. In other words, he is a toxic waste mutant that now is still the same person inside as far as how he feels. He still is that mild and meek dude, but he's got a monstrous looking body and he's got monstrous strength as well. Plus he's got a radioactive mop. It's hard to explain. It happens. If you've seen the movies and before, you kind of know. Along with all this, you've got just a cavalcade of crazy and colorful, odd characters throughout. And I mean, It was exactly what I wanted from this movie. I mean, for some people, they might be disappointed. They have a huge love for the old one. But I feel like this hits the same tone. It has a level of fun, and it's not afraid to get gory. It's not afraid to be cartoonish. It's not afraid to be way over the top. I feel like all the actors, especially Kevin Bacon, Elijah Wood, and Peter Dinklage, I think all the actors they understand the assignment. And they're going with it and really chewing up the scenery, but doing it in a way that I think fits. And the vibrant, colorful, but yet kind of grungy look of the film is just right, I think. The somewhat practical, somewhat digital, but a lot of practical stuff in here too. Effects are really great. The just almost 80s ethos, almost motley punk rock gang kind of style of this. There's this like terrible, like almost ICP kind of band called the Killer Nuts, and their whole ridiculous subplot as a gang out sent to kill and to enforce for this toxic waste corporation. They're great. And to the point that they all have kind of like costumes, and one of them has like a chicken mask he wears, and you're just wondering with the whole movie, like, why the chicken mask? And at some point, the chicken mask comes off, and it's a great joke. It's a great gag. There's another character in that gang that always is doing parkour to the point that he's driving everyone crazy. Wherever he's at, he's doing parkour. It's just dumb, but like that's the vibe of the whole movie. It's dumb, but so much fun, and so stupid in such a great way. I don't know. For me, it really worked. I guess I could see some people who are just hardcore Trauma fans. For one reason or another, it wouldn't maybe quite work for them, or they'd think like it's trying to recapture a glory that is impossible to recapture. I've never been a huge Trauma person, although I've seen enough of them to appreciate what they're doing. But for whatever reason, this one really worked for me. I think for me, what's the secret sauce in this one is, other than the tone and the look and all that stuff, which I think is on point, and the crazy violence and the crazy characters and set pieces, all that stuff is good. But what really allows this version to me to sing is Peter Dinklage. I think even though he's covered in latex and a crazy costume that hardly makes him able to emote with his facial features, it shows you how important it is to put a really great actor into a crazy costume, because it makes a difference. And in here, having Peter Dinklage in there, he is able to really do his thing and make the character just that much more engaging and that much more fun. And that is why I think this movie works for the people it'll work for. Now, all of the praise and things I'm saying about this aside, this is not going to obviously work for everybody. You just get grandma and grandpa off the street who know nothing about Trauma and are just looking for a cool, like superhero-esque, maybe slightly R-rated version. Like if they're looking for a Deadpool or that kind of a thing, they could come into this and be like, what is this mess? This is so dumb. I think a lot of them will think that. You have to be somewhat in on the joke. You have to kind of know what you're getting into. But if you're into the joke and you're into the style and you kind of already are ready for this sort of thing, then I think you're going to have a great time with it. I'm going to rate the Toxic Avenger remake by Macon Blair. What am I going to go here? I don't know if I'm going to go... This is better than a 3-star banger for me, which is pretty good. I don't know if it's quite 5-star for me, or... I'm really torn on this. I'm going to go 4.5 stars, just because I've only seen it once, but I feel like I'm going to see it again and like it even more, because it is just a ton of fun. I'm really curious to see if Eric goes all the way 5 or 6.9 stars in this. I think he might go pretty high. But then again, I kind of get the feeling maybe he really wants it to be even more. I don't know. For me, this is kind of right up on that Frankie Frico sort of a scale. The Psycho Gorman kind of, if you like that kind of style, that kind of thing, this is right in there. And I think it's pretty darn close to those. So I'm going to go 4.5 stars for the Toxic Avenger remake. Okay, next up, I have got Disconnect from 2012. Disconnect is directed by Henry Alex Rubin. And this is a movie, once again, that Mitch Burns kind of assigned to us. And what we do every month is we have our Patreon episode where we do, in the Patreon episode, 2 movies from the year that is picked for that that month. This year is 2012. And then we have one of the movies from there, we call it a signed pick, and that is one we talk about in the main episode. And that's what this is. And Disconnect stars Jason Bateman, Frank Grillo, Andrea Riseborough, Alexander Skarsgård, a whole bunch of people that you recognize, a lot of them earlier in their career, a little before they really kind of made their name, or at least they weren't as big a names, other than maybe Jason Bateman, but all the rest of them there, we've seen a ton now. And Disconnect is this is a movie I'd never even heard of. I'd never even heard of this movie. I was like, what is Disconnect? And I almost have to make sure you get the right one. So that's why I wanted to make sure I said the name of the director and the year, because you just put Disconnect in, you might get a few different results because it's such a generic kind of a one-word title. Basic concept of this movie, to me, it's in some ways almost like a Crash, not the people who love to get crash and have times together. No, not the Crash that won the Oscar that people now revile. It's kind of like that in the sense that it's a very topical, like, hey, let's look at what the world is like right now with a bunch of different character stories that may or may not intersect. Kind of, it tries to be very, I don't know, cutting edge, I guess. So there's a level in those kind of movies, especially when they're 10, 15 years old, when those kind of movies will always seem somewhat dated because they're trying to be like cutting edge, but they're not of the time anymore. So there's always that interesting like dichotomy there. What is this movie about? Well, it's about obviously the disconnection that people have with each other in modern society, specifically around their internet interactions and their ways that they're communicating on the internet versus in person, and how those might go a lot of different negative directions. There's really three basic stories here. You got the Riseborough character. She's like a reporter, and she's trying to kind of uncover and do an expose on these cam rooms, streaming like sex cam rooms where there may or may not be underage children involved in those, and there might be a whole house of those people that are being abused. And hang on, I got my cat here. She strikes up a conversation with a young man and of undetermined age, but you get the idea he's probably 16, 17, but it seems like he may be pretty young. And she strikes up a conversation with him and kind of a friendship online, doesn't do sexual stuff with him, which of course immediately he's expecting her to do. And then through that, she kind of convinces him to help her do this expose of what's going on in these cam room like groups where they almost have like a Oliver Twist sort of a thing, where an older person might kind of gather and get a bunch of younger people into like a single house and have them all do different cam rooms and basically are exploiting them, obviously. The second main story is about a young kid who's the son of Jason Bateman character. And this young kid is very withdrawn, kind of emo, but very quiet and shy. And he starts to get catfished by one of his friends, not even a friend, just a guy who knows him at school. These two guys that are kind of, I don't know, kind of not bullies as much as they are like, they like to do pranks and kind of mean pranks on people. In this case, they start pretending to be a girl, catfishing this young guy, and it goes very wrong in a dangerous way. And then the third one is a young couple, and they're both grieving because they've lost their child recently, and the woman, the wife in the situation, has been in chat rooms and stuff for grief, and she's kind of struck up a friendship with a man who had lost one of his kids. And you're not really sure if it's romantic or not, but what happens is immediately, as part of her online like chat room experiences, she somehow opened them up to a identity theft situation online. So you have identity theft, you have catfishing, and you have like sex cam rooms, possible underage stuff going on. That's your three basic stories. And then how all these three different stories are impacting their lives, and the negativity of not being able to connect for real, but doing all this stuff online is causing this disruption and chaos in these people's lives, and how their loneliness and isolation through digital lives is causing them to have real effects in their real lives, and how they may or may not come out of that, at the other end of that, better or more balanced, and how will they cross over with each other? So a pretty interesting idea, pretty really well acted by all involved, especially seeing a young Andrea Riseborough, because we know her so much now in these kind of indie, quirky, weirdo roles where she's so much more bold. And here she's playing it very straight, but you see the edges of kind of her charisma and her energy coming out. And you get the feeling like you can just see what she's going to become before she's there. In fact, for a while, I was having a hard time even recognizing that it was Andrea Riseborough. It's like, is that Andrea Riseborough? I guess that's her, because she's the only one it could be. And then eventually I was seeing her face there, but it just doesn't look like the way she does now. She has so much more of a recognizable look, although she is definitely still a chameleon to some degree. I think her story, to me, not her story so much, but her performance probably was the one that really struck out. I guess a lot of people also called out Jason Bateman because it was one of the first like super dramatic roles he did. I think he's good here, but for me, he's always himself. He did a good job though. So what is my overall take on this movie? Good, not great. I think it tends to be a bit melodramatic, and this tends to feel a little bit to me like a TV drama more than a movie. In kind of the same ways that Crash movie was too. There's a little bit of not going to say preachiness per se here, but there's a little bit of a self-satisfied tone to it or something where it's like, oh, we're showing you the deep, dark underbelly and the way that our society is just falling apart. It's kind of this alarm bell that you almost feel this in some movies and some stories where like people think they're really getting something about modern society that's just the biggest, worst thing. And it's like the reality is really that it's no different than it's always been. It's just the tools are slightly different. And the understanding of what's going on there is always a little bit like wrong. Kind of the same way they depict, I don't know, punk rockers in movies back in the 80s, or they hip hop artists or hip hop fans in the 90s, or you pick your group that modern society of its time is worried about. And usually the depiction is a little bit cartoonish or a little bit overwrought. And I think this movie kind of falls into that, where it is just like, oh my gosh, it's like this big like alarm bell. The internet, oh my gosh, the world's coming to pieces. Nothing's going to ever be the same. Kind of has that feeling to it. And a little bit convenient too, how everything overlaps, and it's just very dramatic. So I'm going to go 3 stars, I think, in this movie. There was definitely enough good stuff here, and it was really well like acted. It was compelling too. And when I was interested all the way through, I wasn't like bored by this. I think partly because there was 3 different stories to keep me going. But at the same time, a lot of times it was veering into melodrama and schmaltz that I wasn't quite down for. So it was something that could have been great with all the ingredients they had and only ended up being good. So I'm going to go 3 stars for Disconnect. All right, next up, Eddington. I caught up to Eddington, like I said, quickly after it was in theaters. I really wanted to see it in theaters. I wasn't able to, but I did catch up to it. And once again, Ari Aster is one of my favorite directors. If nothing else, he's always doing something interesting and audacious. And here, I think he's along the same path. This, to me, may be his weakest movie, but that's because all of his other movies for me are like 5 stars or 5-star classics. So I'm a huge fan, even of Beau is Afraid. So this is a tiny letdown for me, but not very much. Not the way that Eric does not seem to like Ari Aster, and didn't like this movie really much at all. I think this movie is going to be, I wouldn't say misunderstood, but I think people are just, I don't know, you're going to come into this with whatever you think about this topic. And I think a lot of people will have very strong opinions on it, and possibly, I don't know what I'm going to say for the wrong reasons, because, hey, opinions are valid. I just think because it's such charged stuff to attack that it's hard for people to be, I guess, just look at something artistically, I suppose. And they have to, it's so much like political stuff involved in it. You kind of have to get that into your head too. So what is Eddington? I mean, we've talked about it quite a bit around, so I think people understand the basic concept, but I will give you just a thumbnail. Once again, you've got Joaquin Phoenix playing Joe Cross, a sheriff in small New Mexican town of Eddington. You have Pedro Pascal as the current mayor, running to be reelected as mayor in the town, playing Ted Garcia. You've got Emma Stone as Joe Cross's wife, Her name is Louise Cross. And then you've got Vernon Peake, played by Austin Butler. It's kind of this cult leader figure. There's a bunch of other actors too. I could list them. There's a huge cast. Probably one of the biggest casts, other than maybe Beau is Afraid, that Ari has had in his movies. Once again, this is noted as a 2020 period piece. The midst of the pandemic, the small town is doing a microcosm, all the stuff you saw in the pandemic. Mask mandates, people who are fighting the mask mandates and very angry about government forcing them to do things, and control, and the possibility that the COVID thing isn't even real. And then you've got the people who are very much for the mask mandates, like the Ted Garcia character, and how it's for the best of everybody and they can't understand why people don't want to do it, and hey, let's all get along. And then you have all of the other things that are evolving in society at the time too. You've got Black Lives Matter. You've got performative white people doing performative Black Lives Matter movements. And you've got the idea of data farms and big corporations coming into small town America to bring money in, but also kind of destroy the little small town environment. You've got the cultiness of conspiracy theories and what forces behind the scenes might be actually causing all of these things. And that's kind of shown in the character of the Emma Stone character as kind of this person who may be mentally unstable, who's possibly been kind of influenced into this semi-culty world of the Austin Butler character, although he's not as big of a character in this as you might think from the posters and the promotion materials. But at its heart, it's really about the Joaquin Phoenix character's kind of unraveling. This is a person who cannot really control their world, and it's getting less and less controlled as it goes. And I think it's kind of mirroring the feeling that a lot of, especially the MAGA side of the world, a lot of people have, where it's like they see all these different forces kind of converging upon them, and they're trying to grasp any kind of control they can have to show that their world is still ordered and still makes sense. And for them, it's a really scary thing. So how does this work? I mean, as a political satire, it's kind of on the nose. And I think that's what a lot of people have not responded well to, that it's almost too on the nose for them. They lived through it. They don't need to see it again. And this doesn't move the needle for them in any way different than what they've experienced, that it's a little bit maybe too preachy to them. Now, the one thing I've heard from most people, even people that aren't very into it, is that at least it's pretty fair. It is definitely giving a hard sideways glance to both the right-wing conspiracy theory side of things, as well as the left-wing performative protesting against rights violations on the left. There's a lot of both sides being kind of skewered here. I think, though, what it does to me that is key and most interesting is it boils everything down to the petty fears that really drive all this stuff. There's all these political forces that are just riling people up and angering people and making people get to the point of violence, which it does in this movie. It does get to the point of violence. But when you look at it all, it's this pettiness. It's this anger on a personal level between people that really drive everything. And I think that is kind of, to me, that's really the core of this movie. And I think that's the real wisdom that it's getting at here, is that when you see all these things, when it really comes down to it, it's petty grievances and anger of like one person maybe just stole another person's wife. One person is with a girl that another guy used to like, and he's mad that he likes her. Another guy likes her now. And it's just it's at that level of ridiculousness that is causing all these huge political movements to be kind of fueled, because there's this kind of emotional core that really doesn't have anything to do with the issues at hand. It's just about people feeling wronged. And that's kind of the core there. And the last thing I'll say is, what I feel is maybe happening with Ari Aster, and I'm not sure about this is my theory, is that, you know how a lot of directors or film series, you get trilogies. Here, I think we get duologies. I think the first two movies by Ari Aster are these kind of main female-centric characters caught in grief, caught in toxic family or love relationships, and caught in a very culty environment. in both Hereditary and Midsummer. And now we have another duology with man babies as the protagonist, both played by Joaquin Phoenix, both in societies that are out of control and they feel put upon by, both very afraid man babies who are doing everything that they can to understand and survive a world, a corporate world, that is somehow out to get them and to hurt them and almost surrealistically attack them. And in both cases, those protagonists are on kind of these epic journeys to try to kind of save the world and save their souls and to re-grasp the control of their lives. But both of them are they're trying to stay afloat and they are not very good swimmers. I like Eddington a lot. I think there's a ton of good stuff here. I think it's very funny. Once again, he is doing comedy in a really subversive and interesting way. I think there is a lot of smart stuff going on here. And I think it's as a microcosm and like satire on modern society, especially in the Trump era and the COVID era, I think there's a lot to be had here. But even more importantly, if you want to see more of, a portrait of what this kind of, like I said, this kind of put upon man baby who's got a gun and is really angry at everything in the world and really scared. And by God, he's got the gun though. So if it comes down to it, he's going to use that gun and he's going to do what he can to like shoot at the sky and get that person who's getting at him, like that kind of thing. I think that's where this movie really sings, on these like characters that feel impotent and are doing everything they can to survive. I'll give one little microcosm that'll get out of here. I'm going to go 4.5 stars, by the way, on Eddington. 4.5 stars. I really liked it quite a bit. Here's a perfect microcosm in the Cross character, the sheriff character. At this point, he's going full, like, I'm going to run for mayor too moment. And he's really angry and he goes over to Pedro Pascal's place. Pedro Pascal's having a big old like party and there's music blaring. The neighbors are angry because the music's blaring, but they're having this kind of, I forget what it's for. I think it's just for a re-election party or whatever. And the music's blaring and you just follow behind the sheriff as he gets there and he's just angry because he's angry at the guy too. He's angry because that guy had been with his woman. And he's going to march in there and he's going to tell him what. He walks in there and he's really mad. He goes all the way. The music's blaring the whole time, goes all the way. And he turns down that music to tell him what for. And the Pedro Pascal guy turns the music back up. And the sheriff turns the music back down. Pedro Pascal turns the music back up. And it's like this super petty moment between these two characters who are supposed to be like the leaders of the community. And they're fighting with the volume of the music system at a party. And it's like, it just is this moment that is essentially like two teenage boys angry over the same girl or something. That's the energy. And I think, once again, I haven't heard many people talking about that when it comes to Eddington. And to me, that's where the real wisdom, the real vision of what the world is like right now is at, right there. I love what Ari Aster is doing. I'm really curious to see if my theory of duologies is true. I suspect his next movie will not have Joaquin Phoenix at all, or if he does, it'll be a minor character. It'll be a totally different kind of movie. It won't have any relationship to the style or the subject matter of Eddington and Beau is Afraid, and it'll be the beginning of a new duology. That's my theory. I could be totally wrong. We shall find out. All right, guys. Am I going to talk about Alien Earth? I think I'm going to put it off for another week. I'm going to watch another episode. I'm going to have to get more wisdom under my belt to see if I really think what I think about Alien Earth. So I'm going to leave you with those three movies. Eddington and Toxic Avengers. Toxic Avenger are your two winners for the week, with the disconnect being okay. All right, guys. See you on the Patreon side. Later.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Greg here. I have 2 extra movies for this episode that I did not get to with Eric Holmes because he at the time of the recording, he was definitely tired. We went really way overboard on Patreon and whatnot. That was a very fun episode. And he wanted to sleep, but I made him stay on for just a little bit longer so we could do a quick recording of this episode. And that was my bad because I was not able to add a couple of movies to talk about, a couple of extra movies that I feel are value added for this week. Okay, so let's get to it. First up is this movie called Griffin in Summer. Bad news is it's only in theaters August 29th. It's actually good news because it's going to be in theaters. Bad news is I hope some of you might not be able to see it in your local theater. Please put this in your purview when it hits digital or streaming or physical media or whatnot. This is a very first-rate comedy, really well written. Let me read right now the plot synopsis of Griffin in Summer. Written and directed by Nicholas Colea, centers on this guy named Griffin Nefly, played by Everett Blunk. And Griffin, he's 14 years old, and he's living with his parents in this suburb, and he has dreams of moving to New York City. Thing with Griffin is he's not your average 14-year-old. The movie starts with people going out to summer, and they're all having his friends, his actor friends. They're having the time of their lives in summer. Some of them might possibly be hooking up or dating for the first time, or maybe for their second summer. They're growing into their teenagehood. Griffin, however, has a one-track mind, and his one-track mind is to continue to write plays. He is a playwright. He just stays at his suburban home, writing all day and fantasizing about moving to New York. His mother's played by Melanie Linsky. She works hard. And look, it says at the beginning that he's living with his parents, but well, you're actually inferring that you see his mom and the dad's not around. Maybe he's on business. Not going to really mention what's going on with that situation, but you see mainly the mother in this narrative, again, played by Melanie Linsky. What she does is mom hires a 25-year-old handyman played by Owen Teague. Okay, and this handyman ends up befriending Griffin, or maybe vice versa. Griffin ends up befriending this 25-year-old handyman because Griffin gradually has a crush on this guy. This guy who is a performance artist from New York. He used to live in Bushwick, and he is trying to save up enough money to go back to New York as well. Thing with this handyman is he's not exactly the most articulate person. He's not the brightest bulb in the neighborhood. He's not very smart whatsoever. He has this sort of Marlon Brando, James Dean-esque affectation about him, but he's not pretentious. He's just maybe a little bit slow on the uptake, but he's also, at least from Griffin's POV, eye candy. And Griffin in Summer is a coming of age of Griffin as he starts crushing on this 25-year-old. Okay, now what's interesting for this movie is Griffin himself is a very eccentric and funny, funny teenager. Really great script by Nicholas Colea. And throughout the narrative, you are wondering whether or not you should be on Griffin's side because he has a way of writing plays that he's very inflexible with collaborating with his fellow students, and he has a very perfectionist way of viewing his storytelling, and his storytelling, the stories that they reenact, which this one story, I forgot the name of the play he's working on right now, but it centers on the deterioration of a marriage of this couple, seemingly successful married couple, I think, if I recall, living on either the Upper West or the Upper East Side of New York. And it's all about then one of them is possibly an alcoholic and the other person might be cheating. And it's the way it's written and told by Griffin is very funny. And to see these teenagers act out these moments is pretty funny as well. Ultimately, the 25-year-old handyman, again played by Owen Teague, he is such the object of Griffin's affection, right? Ultimately, this adult ends up being part of Griffin's play. And there goes the ultimate weird situation. Here is this adult, and he's in this relationship drama with a bunch of teens. And hence the drama behind Griffin Summer. The main drama, of course, is what will happen with Griffin's big crush on this adult? Is it going to end up sideways, or is Griffin going to get his heart broken? All that stuff. The movie also stars Catherine Newton and Abbie Ryder Fortson. Abbie Ryder Fortson plays Griffin's best friend, and she's probably the closest to him as far as understanding his human nature, and she's sort of a producer on his place. She's the one, or the manager, she's the one who helps organize all of these actor meetings, and she is sort of his quote unquote right hand woman, right hand man, right hand woman for his playwriting stuff. So overall, very interesting coming of age story. It really succeeds as a well-written, oftentimes there are a couple of times when I audibly laughed. It's hilarious, and I especially like this kind of sarcastic, neurotic humor that writer director Nicholas Collier is bringing out in Griffin in Summer. I was talking about Griffin's affections for the handyman. Griffin's own affectations are very, very funny, and he's just a really interesting, unique character. I mean, you go down the line of unique characters, and I'm thinking Harold and Maude. Obviously, does Griffin Summer reach the levels of Harold and Maude? No, but it's still very, very good. And I hope this is a movie that, if you check out the trailer, if you're laughing at it, if you're laughing with the movie and are enjoying the rhythms, you're gonna enjoy Griffin in Summer, especially if you've ever dreamed of New York, you have an interest in writing, or most importantly, you have an interest in well-etched characters who are pretty funny. I will say this, there is a warning. Some of you may not like Griffin Nafla, again, played by Everett Blunk, and I hope I get to see more of him. He's a very talented young actor, but some of you might be turned off by his behavior, especially Griffin's behavior towards his mother. He treats his mom really, really bad. And Melanie Linsky, how could you ever treat her bad? She's so cool as an actress, and never met her as a person, but she seems like a really nice person as well. So Griffin in Summer in theaters August 29th. Bruce Perky likes to say hidden gem a lot, but yeah, this is one of these movies where I feel like it will be a hidden gem because it's not going to be one of the big movies you're going to be looking at the marquee or the local theater you're going to. But if you see Griffin in Summer playing at your local theater and you're in the mood for an interesting coming of age comedy, maybe give this one a shot. Yeah, give this one a shot. Griffin in Summer, my rating for it, as I type my rating on the Google Doc, is 4.5 out of 5 stars for Griffin in Summer. Next up is 55, and I'm going to read the plot synopsis for 55 right now. And it's, again, this is the movie that is produced by Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott, the director of Alien. What else did he direct? He directed Kingdom of Heaven, Blade Runner, 1492, I think it's called Conquest of Paradise, Matchstick Man. I'm thinking off the top of my little head here, my big head with a little brain. The Counselor. He's done so many interesting pieces of work. The one thing about Ridley Scott is The Duelist. Oh, I love The Duelist. He's one of cinema's most talented visualists, right? Robin Hood. Yeah, Napoleon most recently Napoleon, which I still have yet to watch. But if Ridley Scott is giving the stamp to a movie like 55, at least for me, I was definitely in attention for this. As soon as I saw the words produced by Ridley Scott, I emailed the publicist for 55 and I said, I need to get a screener. I need to watch this movie. Now, does this movie work? I will read the synopsis right now, and hopefully the plot summary interests you. Okay, here we go. Quote, set in the chaotic swirls of Mumbai, 55 is a gritty modern-day adaptation of Oliver Twist, is at its heart a story of love and redemption. Pak Pan, which is the Hindu word for 55, or the Hin word for 55, is a 16-year-old orphan. Again, the name of the orphan is Pak Pan, and his gang of pickpockets operate on Mumbai's crowded train stations, working for the ruthless crime boss, Sagar Bhai. And again, I probably mispronounce a bunch of these names. The main thing is just know the leader of the gang is Pak Pan. And with Pak Pan he's very talented at being a pickpocket, and he is, right, the de facto leader and the person that everyone looks up to, because he's also the one that the crime boss, Sagar Bhai, treats the best. He is the most favored son, the most favored thief among all the pickpockets. Okay, so he is the star. And the first act, you see him, they go to a local brothel and there's a prostitute who's waiting for him, and all of the guys are encouraging him. And you can tell, at least from the beginning, that none of them have any real jealousy for him. They're just they encourage him, whether it's pickpocketing or going to see this prostitute. They're all on his side, at least at the beginning of this movie. What happens is during one of their pickpocketing missions, Pakpan steals a whole bunch of money from this father. And what happens is that money was set aside for a dowry. And he is so overwhelmed that not Pakpan, the person whom he stole it from, this victim who lost all of the dowry money for his daughter, that the man ultimately the next day goes into that train station and he commits suicide. Pakpan and the other, I think they call the thieves Harams, Harams. I could be wrong, but Haram or I gotta look. I should have looked it up. Anyways, Pakpan is the only one among the thieves who pickpockets who feels very guilty about this man's death. And it's established from the beginning that even though Pakpan is a pickpocket, he is not really that interested in making as much money as possible. He makes money for the crime boss and for other people and to subsist on, to live on. But his most interesting part, he's most passionate about looking at the IDs of the people he steals from. So because Pakpan really, that's the Hin word for 55. He only knows himself as the number 55. So for someone like him who, even though he is a pickpocket, there is a level of humanity to him and an empathetic nature, nurturing nature, possibly with Pakpan. It's weird. He steals her money, but he also wants to know about the people he steals from, not because he feels like he's getting one over on these people, on these victims. He really wants to learn about these people. And that level of care, which is weird because he's stealing from them, ultimately leads him to feeling very guilty about this man who died. And the rest of the movie has Pakpan trying to make amends with the victim's daughter, no matter what, even if it costs him his own life or his own livelihood. Pakpan basically insinuates himself into the lives of his victim's daughter. And actually, the victim had two daughters. So he puts himself in their lives slowly but surely. And what he's trying to do is help them, basically help them live on a day-to-day basis, because once all that dowry money is gone, they are in need of money, both of these young women. And it's a very interesting movie, very touching film, and it's shot in Mumbai by director Shyam P. Madiraju. And again, like I said, produced by Ridley Scott. On a visual level, it's very arresting. You see, there's one really interesting chase scene that's set through the buildings through Mumbai that is just gorgeous to look at and thrilling to look at as well, because you're seeing a bunch of these pickpocketing things happen. And as far as I don't know how much of a budget Shyam had to work with, but 55 on the big screen, I am imagining would look really, really good. The story itself, probably, I enjoyed it. It's an interesting movie because you have this person who is essentially a criminal. Can this young criminal redeem himself, especially since he is, I don't know how you guys think. Is he direct? Pretty much, I know the guy who committed suicide, it's his own action, right? It's his own decision. But one can argue that Pakpan is directly responsible for that man's death. And how does he deal with that? How does he, as a young man, try to make things better? Or maybe he'll just make things worse. That is a premise of 55. Again, visually arresting. The lead, I need to find the name of the actor, but Pakpan is very good in this movie, very, very memorable. And once you see the characterizations of the daughter he's trying to help, she's interesting as well. The crime boss, the main antagonist of 55, Sagar Bhai, He is very, very good as well. I should look up the actors involved in this really wonderful movie from Shyam P. Madiraju, and I hope he gets. I'm looking at his IMDb. This director, he's also a producer of the 2014 film Cake, which stars Jennifer Aniston. So 55. Let me look right here on IMDb. The person who plays Pakpan his name is Rizwan Shaikh. And the crime boss, Cigar Bai, is Imran Hashmi. I believe Imran Hashmi is a very popular actor as well. And yeah, so right now I'm looking at IMDb. Has a 7.4 out of 10 rating. I would have bumped it up. For me, 55, another solid feature. I'm giving it 4.5 stars, and it's beyond me. The original title is called Harami. It was released in 2020. I'm assuming in India and other international markets. And now 5 years later, it's here in the States. Again, this is one of those movies where if you're at your local theater and you see the number 55 in your theater and you want to see something completely different, see Mumbai, see the streets of Mumbai and just experience this pretty much interesting modern day grand adventure, crime, family drama situation. Yeah, 55 is definitely worth it. Again, 4.5 stars for me for 55 in theaters August 29th. So those are my two movies, 55 and also, I'm sorry, I'm spacing it right now. So 55 and Griffin in Summer, both of them 4.5 stars. Both of these movies are in theaters August 29th. And that is it for this episode of CinemAddicts. I also wanted to add that I did, for my mini review for A Little Prayer, I gave it 5 stars and I was very rushed in that review, and that's my fault on that. I wanted to say why I gave it a perfect score, and it's ultimately because it just feels like a real life story that's unfolding before your eyes. And towards the third act, you get a interesting heart-to-heart conversation between Bill, played by David Strathairn, and his daughter-in-law, and that his daughter-in-law is Tammy, played by Jane Levy. And they're just sitting if I recall, on a bench, and they're just discussing a certain matter. And the way that section is performed is so memorable. And it's one of these things where if I ever get this on digital, or if it's streaming, or if I get it on physical media, I will continue to come back to the final several minutes of A Little Prayer. Very evocative for me. Also, I did mention the mother, the matriarch, is played by Celia Weston, and Bill's other daughter is played by Anna Kamp, and she plays Patty. All of these characters in this movie, actually, the son, David, played by Will Pullen, he doesn't have much work to do with A Little Prayer, but Anna Kamp and Celia Weston, they have their moments in the sun with A Little Prayer. It's just really rich characterizations and we've seen family dramas ad nauseum, and it's very rare when a family drama really just knocks me out. I don't mean knocks me out in a big punch, overture, operatic aria type of way. I'm talking about how just the simple nuances of this story, especially the relationship between Bill and his daughter-in-law. It's just so really well done. And from writer-director Angus McLaughlin. I've never been to, I think it's set in Winston-Salem. Definitely makes me want to visit that area as well. It's just a quiet, beautiful, but ultimately very powerful movie. And yeah, and it's only 90 minutes. 90 minutes for A Little Prayer. So this was a very good, like Bruce Perky likes to say, hidden gem week for me. I found 3 hidden gems: A Little Prayer, 5 stars; Griffin in Summer, 4.5 stars; and 55, 4.5 stars as well for me. I put The Toxic Avenger, 4.5 stars. So it was a great week. And apologies for rushing Eric out the door. I wanted him to get some rest for the first half of CinemAddicts. So that's why this episode is a little bit jumbled with our quick in and out in the family show for CinemAddicts, and then Bruce's attic, and now here I'm not in the attic, I'm actually in the family den. So maybe hashtag Greg in the den or Srzavasi in the den. I don't know. But hopefully you guys got some value added stuff for this episode of CinemAddicts. Take care and see you guys next week. Bye.